Great.
Thanks, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
Um, are we gonna get I see Chaz just joined. Are we going to get a charter beyond our discussion? Is someone chairing this meeting? How does this work?
Great question.
Chaz, did you hear my question? You did,
No,
right?
sorry, I just came in. What was the
Oh,
question?
my question was, are we going to get a charter? Are we deciding a charter? Do we have a chair? Like what is happening in this meeting?
You are setting up your ground rules, your charter, your chair, all of those things. I can kind of show you what happened on the town meeting this morning, if you want to get a sense of that, if that's helpful, and whatever support you need here for. But I think the kind of subject, the end goals are the same. What numbers what numbers are we looking at here? Where are the gaps? What can be done, you know, in terms of other revenues and expenditures to help with the problems that we're facing? And then if there's a need to raise taxes, by how much? And then pressure testing those assertions. But how you go about that, how you assign out the reporting of that is all up to you.
I see. And remind me, the members are Jeff, me, Dick, Cliff, and Sadaf. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
And what would this committee do, given that essentially the schools need to prepare a budget that sort of lays out the things we've talked about? What would this committee do, or are there ideas of what this committee would do in advance of receiving that information?
Um, I think there may be some analysis that could be done in terms of, you know, the past couple of years, just having that data available and ready to go, and kind of looking at how it then relates to the data that's coming forward. But I don't want to get ahead of the schools. I think that's up to the school team to determine how best to proceed on that front.
Yeah. Chaz, I looked at the memo that was attached as part of the agenda, and we're already a little bit behind
Yeah,
in
that
terms
was
of,
Sadaf's original memo. Yeah.
yeah. And uh, that seems to have assumed at least a budget for, I mean, it actually assumed a budget for 3 years or projection for 3 years, as I recall, for the schools um, already. Um, but that probably is not realistic, or pretty clearly is not realistic. And I guess the question is, um, I mean, we certainly have some ideas, and there have been ideas that have floated about possible revenues and expenditure reductions. Um, do we start with a school proposal and then look at those, or do we begin looking at those in a vacuum? And I gather we could probably do either.
I'd like to just make an observation and a couple of suggestions. The problem, I believe, is only me speaking, with the full committee meetings that we've had over the last several months, is that, like so many meetings that in town, people get the information sort of like the day of or the day before. They get a presentation during a meeting, and they're supposed to be up to speed on everything that got dumped on them shortly before that, and to be able to be prepared to ask questions. And I don't think that that is sort of the best approach, nor do I think that people have um, uh, fully digested information that they've been given. And I think the benefit of having split into these subcommittees is that the individuals on the subcommittees can sort of take the time to actually evaluate what they've been given, make sure that the information comports with the questions that have been asked, and then, delve deeper if the data doesn't sort of, fully address some of the issues that people have talked about. And I think if we don't do that, then we're just like running ahead of where we've been running in place, and I don't think that's a really good approach. So I think, from my perspective, one of the things that this group should be doing is actually taking a look at the information that was given us 10 days ago in terms of the answers to the questions that we asked. Make sure that people feel that those questions were answered fully, and to the extent that there are additional questions that bubble up, then we need to compile those questions. I appreciate that the schools are going in a particular direction, that we might not be able to ask these questions and get answers for some time, but at least we're going to be more educated and more thorough than I think the overall committee has been with respect to, frankly, anything that we've discussed to date. So I think that we're going to be going back and looking at some of those questions. I think we're going to be looking for clarification on some things. I think we're going to be looking for maybe some updated data, because some of the data is a little stale. And I think that by going through that exercise, when we finally do get numbers, that we're going to be in a position, a better position, to be able to evaluate them expeditiously.
Cliff,
And
can you give an example of some of like the further questions you have from the document?
Well, no, I can't. I can't, because honestly, I've been waiting for this sort of group to get put together for a very long time. And I want to have those discussions. I want to have people actually have conversations about certain things. One thing that I'll throw out, and I know you've heard me talk about this, back at the last time we did an override, it was concurrent with the school's request for some money, not via the override, but in the budget to extend the beat day to a full day, right? And the analysis that was given to certainly the advisory committee and the select board and, frankly, the school committee at the time, was that this was going to be a break-even, at least break-even sort of decision. And that the tuition rates that were discussed then, which was several years ago, we haven't even come to where those are today. And so understanding what the market is, because it was a market-driven decision, okay? The decision was, we're not able to enroll certain families, a lot of families, because we do not offer full day, okay? So the decision was made to try to, meet the market, if you will, to be able to offer that and actually get back the sort of robust enrollment and demand for spaces that seem to have been declining because of the lack of full day options. I'd like to have a much more thorough understanding of where the economics related to that decision lie today, and where our tuition rates are relative to the market, and where they are relative to what was said, 3+ years ago. I think that's an issue. All right. I don't think the information we've gotten to date, answers that question. Maybe the question wasn't asked in the appropriate way. I don't know. But that to me is a revenue opportunity that needs to be more fully evaluated. So that's
And
an example.
the market would be private competition in Brookline.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I do want to think, I actually want to, I'm glad Sadaf is actually here. Take the step of nominating and getting a chair sort of at the beginning. And I would have done it if she wasn't here, but I'm going to nominate Sadaf.
I was going to nominate you, Cliff. So I'm
Not
glad
too
that
late to
Sadaf
hang
showed
up,
up
Sadaf.
too.
You can.
Yeah, or even if Sadaf hangs up.
I wouldn't nominate Mariah either. I mean, I think actually.
I was just kidding. I was just kidding.
No, but it's serious. I don't think we of the entire five are the two people who should not be considered in that.
Yeah.
So
So I missed the first few minutes of this meeting, so I apologize. I was running from another meeting. Did we talk about an agenda and what we hope to accomplish in this 90, a little bit less, 75 minutes?
A
I
little
think
bit,
we
yeah.
were more meta than that even, right? It's like I think we started with like who's our chair and what is our charter, and we've sort of just gotten into the big conversation of like what are we doing here? So the agenda of the specific meeting is even like we haven't really gotten there yet. It's sort of more like big picture, what are we hoping to get out of this whole process, I think.
Okay.
I will also say there's just some preliminaries in terms of like logistics that I want to run by with everyone. Maybe it's helpful to get that out of the way first. Just kind of like a palate cleanser before we jump back into the heady meta stuff, like
Yes.
how to run a meeting and all of those things. So Tiffany has prepared this very helpful document, and I'm going to share. Says it's called a one pager, even though it is 2 pages, but that's because I blew it up so that it's easier to read. Um, so, um, so each subcommittee is responsible for selecting the date and time of its own meetings. Nicole Lima in our office is running the scheduling and operations of this. Thank you, Nicole. So please, if you are trying to schedule things, make sure that Nicole knows. She'll publish also not just the date and time, but what's on the agenda. She'll publish that. Meetings must be posted 48 hours, 48 business hours in advance of when they're scheduled. Realistically, Nicole needs another 24 hours. So by the kind of drop dead date should be 72 hours before a meeting to get date, time, and agenda. Excuse me, to Nicole. If you need an in-person room, Nicole can also reserve room 103 or 111 if they're available in town hall. So just let her know. If you're going to hold a meeting hybrid after business hours, we'll need to just work with you to set up the D10, which is the hybrid camera system in those rooms. So if that's planned at some point, please make sure someone comes in during business hours so that we can walk you through how to do that. Excuse me, I have my children's pre-K cold. It's miserable. So starting and managing the meeting, someone will launch the meeting, either Nicole or an alternate host, someone on staff with an active Zoom license. Please make sure you confirm with the person who's scheduled to host, especially if it's after town business hours. Could be any one of us. We'll do our best to get you set up. The AI companion tool will automatically be enabled. That generates a meeting summary. It's fine. It's better. It's getting better. It still hallucinates a fair amount, so just don't rely on it to don't take the AI summary and say that's the minutes. It's not a good idea. Participant roles, a chair, we've talked about, someone to guide. Only people on the subcommittee and anyone else you add to it, either, ex officio staff like Susan, Bella, should be promoted to co-host. Everyone else participates as guests. Other ENRC members can obviously attend, but they can't participate in discussion to avoid OML violations. Again, any one of us participating who is staff or an ex officio member, you add. If they're non-voting members, they don't count towards your quorum. Under host tools, ensure that only enable waiting room is checked. All other options should remain unchecked. And if you have a subcommittee member participating by phone, you may also need to enable them to unmute themselves. Do not forget, this is really critically important. Start the recording once the meeting begins and stop the recording once the meeting concludes. The meeting recordings are really critical. But also we've had situations where people end the meeting and then stay on to talk about other business, and the recording is still going. And so we can't, we don't want to do that. We don't have to sit around trying to edit that. So just make sure that the recording is stopped. After the meeting with minutes and follow-up, Nicole will post the meeting recording link. One subcommittee member should be assigned to draft the meeting minutes. You could have a regular secretary, or you could do this on a rotating basis. The town subcommittee is going to do it on a rotating basis, they've decided. And if there are requested meeting follow-ups relevant to the town side, submit a list of the request of whatever you need to me and Nicole. I know many of you know this already, but we are sorry to lose Tiffany Oliva. She is leaving us at the end of next week to return to a great opportunity in North Carolina. We're very happy for her, but we're sad to lose her. So Nicole and I will be staffing this sort of work going forward until Tiffany's position is refilled. Again, we talked a little bit about the AI companion. Minutes do not need to be super detailed. They should be as detailed as you see fit to do the work that you need to do. A list of members present and absent, all votes taken or actions approved, roll call vote, including a list of who participated in different ways, and a brief summary of each discussion topic. You do not need to go down the list and say, this member said, this member said, this member said, this member said. You could do that, but you do not have to. You can have a brief paragraph summary of the topics of discussion. The things that you really need to have are who was there and what did you vote on, and how did you vote? So if you can please get finalized minutes to Nicole 48 hours before the next meeting is scheduled. That way they get loaded into the packet, people can review them, and then they get signed off for approval. Are there any questions about the logistics side of this?
Let me just say that CTONS does not have an official minute taker. I assume we do not have an official minute taker.
That is correct.
And we rotate that role with one individual doing one or two meetings and then going on to the next and the next and the next. And I would suggest that. So in alphabetical order, using first names. Cliff.
Well
I
played.
thought you were going to say last names, Dick. Then
I think, yeah, last names should go first. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
No,
I'm a terrible
I
minutes
can start.
So, you know, the process you went through is pretty different than what I'm used to with the advisory committee. So it's just interesting. We don't need a staff person to be there to, you know, launch a meeting because we have access to a few different accounts through, you know, Dennis or Lisa.
Right.
I gather you
Right.
don't want to do it that way. Also, sometimes people are, you know, just use the recording as the minutes. Is there a legal reason to not do that?
I believe we need some sort of written document of some kind. But I will double check with town council's office.
I'm pretty sure
And-
that's true. I'm pretty sure that the law requires you to post minutes like within 3 meetings or 90 days or whatever it is. There's a requirement.
that was gonna be my last point. You know, you do have at least three meetings, or I thought 30 or 90 days, whichever is longer. And I just wanted to circle back with that because sometimes getting minutes turned around that fast could be challenging.
Yeah.
So that's just the question. The last question, or maybe a suggestion, is it's probably going to be really helpful to sort of try to set a particular day and time where we can all sort of like say, okay, we're going to do our best to be there, as opposed to trying to coordinate every week or every 10 days, because then you start running up against deadlines.
Yeah,
So that,
I agree with that. I think that simplifies everything.
If I can just add a couple of quick notes to the Zoom, starting the Zoom, it's because of who has Zoom licenses. And there's also this question in the coming year of if we'll even have Zoom anymore. So that's why a staff person, one of us, needs to launch the meeting for you. In terms of the written document, we definitely need that in addition to the video recording. You do have more time, as you've outlined, Cliff, compliant with the meeting law, to post the meeting minutes, but I just think because of the number of subcommittees and the kind of forward-facing nature of this committee work, if we can, as a best practice, try to get those in within the next scheduled meeting, that would be ideal. Of course, if we can't, it's an option to do it on the next one, but just want to try to keep all of this up to date as we can along the way.
that's great. That's fine. My last question actually has to do with recordings themselves. Because we've been told that recordings are not legally mandated. And so that they don't actually have to be done. I'm just kind of curious if that's accurate.
That's
That's
true.
correct. Yep.
That
Thank you.
that being said, the recordings can be a great help to the individual who's doing minutes.
And in the event
But
that
but I think maybe now that the AI is available, that is, as I understand from our discussion today, independent of the recording. So
yes, yeah,
you
it
might
generates
have-
both.
I mean,
It
you
generates
might
both a
find
transcript and a
that-
summary. So, and the
Yeah.
transcripts tend to be pretty good. The summaries less so.
Yeah.
I think
Do
the
you-
meeting recordings are nice too, just as an opportunity for transparency, or if the minutes aren't clear. It always seems nice to have them.
Cliff, do you have an objection or a problem with the recording issue?
No.
Okay.
It's just,
Good. Okay.
as Chaz said before, sometimes people start early, or sometimes people go late, and sometimes the conversation before or after is,
Yeah.
you can't really edit it out. So that's all.
Okay. Could I may I second your nomination of Sadaf as chair? Just since she is here and can protest or not protest or
Yeah, I'm okay taking this on if I'm voted as such. So that's my affirmative non-protest.
Your acceptance.
That's a better said than my double negative.
Do we need a formal vote?
We should.
Yeah.
That's our first minutes, so I vote yes. Maybe
I'll
Chaz,
vote
you should
yes.
call the roll, since typically someone calls the roll before
all
the
right,
chair is
since
here.
I am
Yeah.
taking the minutes here.
Okay.
Yeah, when you let Dick call it, yeah.
Maria,
Yes.
All right.
Jeff,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Sadaf,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay. Thank you. And I do very much agree with the idea of trying to find a date that generally works for people. If you want to take it from here, Sadaf.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I think it would be good if we had, like Cliff suggested, kind of standing meeting time. I think we should talk about whether we want to do it weekly, if that's too much, or every other week. Just given that time is short, I just want to weigh the pros and cons of doing something weekly versus every other week. So I don't know if people have suggestions on a cadence. But interested in hearing people's feedback on that.
I personally liked this time. I thought it worked relatively well. And I also would like to say maybe every other week because we don't have a lot yet, but also maybe we schedule it every week and we cancel it if we don't need it.
Yeah. Um, so let's talk about weekly versus every other week, and we can talk about meeting time. It is difficult for me to do like a middle of the workday. I would prefer like a 5 o'clock or even just like a 4:30, so it's at the end of the workday. Is typically better for me. I don't know, Jeff. I saw your
Yeah.
reaction to to this time, where I thought that was a sort of protest with your face. Um,
Yeah.
so I just want to I know we're tackling two different issues. My preference is probably to do weekly and cancel if we need to, and just given the time. And there'll be some holidays in between and things like that. And my preference is to do just something slightly later, typically not on a Friday, just for my schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate to be that stick in the mud. Today worked out for me because there's nothing going on, but any time during the week between like 8 and 5, it's just hard. It's hard to get the time. And then even if I get the time, if something happens because I support some end users and that sort of thing, then I just have to leave. So I always prefer to do them off hours just because then I can really focus and not worry about, I mean, if something really bad happens, they'll call me anyway, but that tends to be extremely rare. So, my vote is, of course, Monday through Thursdays, 5 and later. Um, but today I'm here and hey, great. Although I do have to leave probably earlier than 4:30. On the 1 week or 2 week, the we I do agree with Mariah that, maybe now we're sort of at a 2 weeky cadence, but until there's really some meatier stuff to chat about. That being said, to sort of work backwards, I know Chaz, at one point you had said, December 31st was like when we really, 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 really want to get everything done. That's really only 2 months and a couple of weeks away. So when are we envisioning the work that comes out of the subcommittee finishing in such a way that it will feed the main committee in time to finish the report if the 31st of December is still that date? Because if that's only going to be a month's worth of meeting time, then we probably do need to meet every week because we just don't have enough time.
Yeah. We need something for the forecast meeting for the select board, which is in mid-December. Pull the exact date. I think it's the 12th. I'm going to double check here. The 16th of December. So at least some top line recommendations need to be ready by the 16th. So kind of play that back and think, by the 8th, the week of the 8th, there's got to be some sort of output from the subcommittee to take to the main committee so that there can be a recommendation made. That doesn't have to be a completed report yet. A completed report can come in mid-January. It's just in order for the select board and staff, us on staff and on the school side, to build the two budgets. We need to get verification from the select board and the school committee that, yep, this is this is the ballpark that we're in. This is what it's going to fund. And then we can build that out.
Okay, so that gives us 7 weeks starting next Monday to hit that 8th of December. So yeah, so maybe that's, well, I don't know. What does everybody else think? I mean, that's such a short time frame.
It's short. I think we start weekly and then we cancel if we need to. There's a holiday in the
Yeah.
middle, like with Thanksgiving, like people are gonna be on
That's
vacation.
true too.
Like people start traveling on Tuesday, right? Like um,
And there's
So-
town meeting.
That's right.
yeah,
Town
yes,
meeting as well.
right. Which half this group is gonna be doing that.
Yeah.
Susan, is there a ETA of, and I should know this, but I can't remember right now, of when the draft of the budget that you and Bella and team are preparing corresponding to the level service budget? I don't know if she's there right now.
Yeah, I am.
Hi.
Well, we're kicking off our launch a week from Monday. So I don't see that uh, being practical for probably the work that you want to do in the meantime. My understanding was that folks wanted from me, in addition to launching this, that folks want an enrollment projection for next year and also a 5-year forecast. So those are the items that are on my list to be done. While, of course, we're negotiating all 6 contracts for our unions. So
So Susan, I just want to make sure I understand. You said the level forecast, is that what you said? Right? Like a level services
you
forecast?
you all had asked for a 5-year forecast, and
Right.
so
And the
that
5 year
was the enrollments. My understanding was obviously I have to have enrollments to do that. So I'm kind of working on that. As soon as I can get the budget development process launched, then I'm working simultaneously on the enrollment projection piece. Then I'll have that to do the forecast.
And so I know that you guys were asked for 5 years, and maybe Chaz, you can chime in here. I mean, we need 3 years, I think, for the purposes of this committee. But the 5 year ask, I think, came from the town. I just want to make sure we're sort of clear on what is needed and at what timeline between the 3 and the 5 years.
We're working on a 3-year horizon currently on the town side.
I'm wondering where the 5 year was asked is.
We were required to sign an MOA that said I had to do a 5-year. So I'm doing a 5-year
Yeah,
because
and for the override purposes, we're looking at the 3-year projection because that's typical. But on our end, yeah, we beyond that we do our forecast typically goes out 5 years. So
Got it. So I guess so let me ask that question differently. Um, can is it helpful to you, Susan, then to work on the 3 year first, given the timeline for this subcommittee, and does that throw anything out of whack, Chaz, on the town side for the remaining 2 years? In other words, I'm just trying to help Susan prioritize given everything that she has going on.
yeah, no, I mean I'm not going to give yeah, the 4th and the 5th year are going to be, in my view, based on my experience, largely not really helpful for any kind of decision-making purposes because our budgets are built on student need, which is not something you can do like quick little run rate analysis out into the future. So what I can give you is I can take into consideration, as the town has, certain factors that we have a better sense of, like what is my salary projection? What are the assumptions I'm using to build that? I'm not going to, be able to anticipate exactly what my special education costs are because of those are based on needs. So that I'm going to have to do a little bit more work on. So as you get into the out years, they're less and less meaningful. The closer you are to today's date and time, the more meaningful the information and accurate the information will be. So I'll give a 5-year, but it's not going to, take me a significantly longer amount of time to do a 5-year because I won't have the intimate details to be able to do anything concrete 5 years from now, as I look out at what student needs are and how to anticipate the impacts of those. So you'll get more smoothed out kind of an average scenario for the outer years.
Yeah. Okay.
May I ask whether enrollment projections are really a critical part of the forecasting here, since the projections versus reality have been kind of all over the map, and I'm wondering whether you really do have confidence in enrollment projections going out 2 and 3 years that really do drive budgets. So the question is,
Oh, it's a good question.
Can we eliminate a step in the analytical process that might
Well,
slow us down?
yeah, we use the enrollment projections for the development of the 27 budget. So the closer I am to the year that that I have data for, the more meaningful it is. The further out, the less meaningful.
Yeah.
Why this particular year is of interest to me to look at is to see if I can tease out at all potential impacts of some of the federal um, decisions that have been made and the attitudes, we'll say, towards immigration, and the impact that has on our more transient population. I'm only going to have this year's data, but I really do want to have the opportunity, and I will be doing that, some of this assessment next week about trying to make sense of what my enrollments are looking at in practice compared to what I projected them to be, to see if I need to make any adjustments to um, the way that I'm approaching the projection. Again, I don't have a lot of, to your point, data that I feel is, so concrete and solid that I can do longer term projections. I haven't been here long enough to have the data be mine and to really understand all the nuance for Brookline. I certainly understand better now. I feel very good about the projection I did last year. And for example, at the high school, it's coming in pretty close to what I projected. So I feel pretty good about the way I approached the enrollments. It's at the elementary school level that I need to really understand that better. Do I think that the enrollments are going to be a little flatter, or do I think perhaps they'll start to increase as the longer term projections had suggested when Cropper and McGibbons did that? And that's kind of really what I'm exploring, Dick. It does matter in that way. In terms of how many sections we may need. Would my staffing be growing or not when it comes to general education? Special education, of course, is the trickier part, but that's really what I'm looking at, and I think it's invaluable to the development of the upcoming budget. And I want to use as kind of the basis of how I think about and what assumptions I make as I move forward into the 28 and 29 forecast.
Okay.
All right.
Mariah.
I do feel like, my goal honestly is I'm trying to work on that and do some preliminary work around developing, the framework piece. I finally have FY25 information sufficiently processed through the town to be able to take a look at 23, 24, and 25 and see how that calibrates up to how the 26 budget line items, how to calibrate the two. Are they calibrating or not? Do I need to make some adjustments there? If it's tight, and I think it's going to be much tighter than it has been in the past, then that will be helpful information for me to have as I approach the work. So just give me a couple more weeks and I should be able to give you guys something.
All
Okay.
right. So I want to get back to what we were talking about before. Mariah had her hand raised and Cliff, and then I'd like to get back to the meeting timing, cadence, and just for us to nail that down. And then I think what we want to talk about is the different areas we want to focus on. There's sort of a list of things that have been discussed and presented, and I think this team needs to dig into exactly what we're going to prioritize, see if we can take a crack at sort of, who might lead on what. And then I do also want to talk about additional help ex officio members also, so we can get going with kind of the limited time. So Mariah, go ahead.
Sure. And also, can we ask those students to do analysis? They're not here today, but
I've got the students currently doing some work. We talked with them, their timeline is a little more compressed than ours, and also their focus is, ways. I'm trying to figure out ways to get them to be helpful in kind of a broader fashion. So they have three different project focus areas that they currently have.
Okay.
One is the structure of any potential override. That is to say, what based on these discussions, what model of override might be proposed, whether it's the single ballot question, pyramid ballot question, or kind of cafeteria style. Looking at the history of that across Massachusetts and looking at how those have fared. The other area that they're going to do is consumer sentiment analysis. They're taking prior surveys that we've done, all the raw data that we have from Polco and from the comp plan and all these things where we've gone out, and they're going to do an additional survey out to the community to measure community sentiment, community priorities, and so forth, so that we all have that to inform us as we continue our work. And then the last thing they're going to do was a targeted analysis for us, given that the biggest single thing on the town side is fire, the fire department. We asked them to look into a comparison of the injury on duty usage in other comparable communities to determine whether or not that issue and the resulting overtime that we've been experiencing is, the new normal across Massachusetts, and just pressure testing that, since that's the kind of in-depth analysis that they can do with access to other communities that they have. So those are the three project areas where we've asked the students to kind of come
Okay.
in. Um,
Okay. Is there time spoken for? I just want to clarify. So it sounds like their time is spoken for.
their time is now spoken for. Yeah.
Okay.
We have to shore up our own capacity. Is what I.
Okay. So, I guess the thing I wanted to say though is when I looked at what was in the MOA, it sort of said budget projections. And Susan, I hear you saying the word budget. And I guess my question is, can we agree on like a, can we agree on what budget means? Like, are you basically like taking whole masses of people and applying certain percentages? Like how, and I guess it's sort of a question of what does the committee want and what are we asking to be generated, right? Because if we're asking for a very rough number, or are we asking for Susan to literally project all this stuff? I wouldn't want Susan to be spending, to Dick's point earlier, I don't want Susan to be spending too much time on getting like a a budget that's very close if we don't really, or if we just want to make an assumption that enrollment is level or increasing or whatever it's going to be. And I also don't want us to ask questions that are quite more detailed than her projection actually takes into account.
What MOU are we talking about here?
The one between the town and the schools that was the result of the audit that the school committee signed off on last week, and I think select board did this week. Is that
Select board will be next week. Yeah.
next week? So
So that hasn't been shared with like the town school partnership or the advisory committee. It's just sort of like you guys are the only ones you're talking about it, but we don't really understand what you're talking about. I mean, broadly I do, but certainly don't have the details. So that might be.
I can circulate that document. Yeah, that's not a problem.
the one that's in question is the town and PSB will review their 5-year revenue and expenditure projections with the town school partnership prior to the superintendent and town administrator releasing their financial plans for the subsequent fiscal year. My goal in asking this question is just again to make sure that like expectations are being met but not exceeded unintentionally, and making sure we're all on the same page so we're not being inefficient. So
It's going to be a high level forecast. I mean, I can't get into the intimate details of it. I have to build it in order to do that. But I feel like I can give a reasonable forecast of expenses, and then we can true it up more as we build, right? For next year. But I can give you the forecast. I'm not going to go and get down into 1,400 salaries at that minutia level. That would be.
No, I don't think anybody expects that.
Yeah, right. I didn't think he did. So what I'm
well,
going
I
to do
guess
is
I'm concerned about the timeline too. If we have what we originally said was 7 weeks and now it sounds like is maybe less than that even. How is there time for this committee to, like, when will you be able to deliver that such that the committee can review it?
right. Well, first it needs to be presented to the school committee before it's presented to this committee. So my goal is to get it to the school committee at the meeting on the November 6th. That's my target.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Along with the enrollment forecast at that meeting.
Yes.
So I'm going to have, that's what I'm pretty optimistic that I can pull that off.
Okay. Meetings. We're gonna get back to the meeting. Are people comfortable with the weekly meeting given the 7 weeks, right?
Yeah, which now is less than 7 weeks.
That's right.
I
That's right.
I'd be inclined to go along with the idea of a weekly meeting subject to cancellation.
Okay, great.
If rather than trying to fit one in if it turns out that there is something that could be done profitably.
Okay, great.
So-
So let's do a weekly meeting. Let's assume that, well, actually, let's pick a date. Cliff, any concerns about a weekly meeting?
No, I was just gonna say, Tuesdays and Thursdays are probably not gonna be good for me, and I know Mariah has certain days that are not gonna be good for her, between advisory for me and Mariah for school finance committee or school committee meetings.
And
We should get those,
policy.
yeah, whatever, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides like Saturday morning, Mariah, what is available for you? I mean,
Maybe
Mondays,
Monday nights?
Mondays.
Yeah, if we're living after hours for Jeff and Sadaf, then yeah, Monday, like
Yeah.
Monday at 5 maybe, or 6 or something.
Sure.
Yeah, I can usually do a Monday at 5 or 6.
Yeah, Mondays work for me. I was going to add, and I think you alluded to this also, is town meeting is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, starting the week before Thanksgiving and then the week after Thanksgiving. So those days are out. And I definitely go on and party on Friday nights. So
I've
so
seen it.
always,
I've seen him out there. So
All right, so Mondays, would a 5 p.m. work, or do we want to do a 7? I guess my preference is, well, my preference is 6, but I don't know.
are we zooming or are we going to meet in person?
We're zooming. I can't do it in person.
Yeah. Then it does. I can do either one, whatever's easier.
whatever works for you guys with your work schedules.
I guess my preference is 6, just given between my travel schedule and my husband's travel schedule. Sometimes I'm solo parenting. But I can probably manage a 5. Either one is fine.
I would prefer a 6 as well, frankly.
Okay.
It lets me get some balls rolling on this side before,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Should I say
So
6?
Mondays at 6. I think the week of Thanksgiving, let's assume we meet the week of Thanksgiving, unless I'm in town, I can swing that. Just given the short timeline, let's keep it on the calendar and then we'll, take it as we, if we
Good.
need to. Okay, good.
Dan, we've accomplished something.
We have.
All right. Meeting's over. We're
It
out.
only took 50 minutes.
Got to end on a high note. So
Yeah, Monday, right?
So I did want to talk about ex officio members. I have a couple people who I think might be helpful. I wanted to just figure out sort of logistically, it might be worthwhile for us to sort of divide up the work and then, figure out how to leverage those ex officio members. But just wanted to ask this group, are we open to that? I think it's helpful given the timeline, people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do some analysis. But what do people think? I think we have to see what we're going to take on first. Maybe.
I'm like kind of vague. Analysis of what? Like, I don't understand what the analyses are that the committee would do.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
fair.
not trying to be difficult or stupid. Like, I really am like, with what data? Like, there's just so many
Questions.
questions in
Yes.
my mind of what the actual work is here. To me, my limited perception is that like the work is the staff generating things, and then we ask a lot of questions about the assumptions and the necessity and the et cetera of the budget, the different budgets that are created. But
Mhm.
like the side analyses, that's what I guess I'm puzzled by.
I think this is going to be contingent on what we decide we want to tackle as a committee. So maybe we'll sort of put a pin in whether we want to recruit other people, and talk about what we want to focus on as a committee. The document that we talked about on the 18th of September had some recommended, some ideas in there, based on, based on prior conversations. So I might. I'm gonna pull this up so people. I don't know why this isn't like centered or looks very funny on my screen, but I'm gonna pull this up and we can have a chat about it. So give me 1 second. Okay, my Zoom doesn't want to share anything. All right. Sorry, guys. We now use Zoom at my work, and it needs permissions, and now
Of
it wants.
course it does. And now you got to drop the
Oh,
meeting
it's
and
gonna need
rejoin.
me to rejoin. So if any,
Yep.
does anybody else have it handy by any chance? Rather not reboot.
Do you have it on you? Just email it to me and I'll share. You're muted, Mariah.
It's the one that was attached to the meeting, right?
Dang it. Stop making me look bad.
I'm emailing.
I have it here. I can pull it up. Hold on.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I'm assuming this is what we're talking about. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. These questions here, right?
Yes.
Net cost of non-resident program,
Yep.
student program cost,
Good, I did not.
efficiencies and cost reductions, teaching loads,
Yep.
and class sizes and classroom usage.
All right. So these are some of the topics that have come up over the course of the conversation. I know that portions of this were covered by the school questions, which transparently, because I've been in several countries over the last few weeks, I have not done a deep dive on. So apologies, I'm a couple steps behind on that. But the question is, are these still the topics? And are there additional topics that we want to delve into?
I looked at that and got it here. And believe it or not, I have it in hard copy.
Excellent.
Nice.
Do we have a chat? We don't have a chat. I was gonna paste it in the chat, but I can't find it.
No, we don't have a chat. Sorry. That's my
Oh.
Zoom setting.
Oh, okay.
Or not. Wrong document.
I can pull it back up. I just was hoping to like be efficient and be able to see you all too.
Yeah, I don't know if this issue was in there, but I do think that I mean, there is a reference to budget discussions, teaching well. I do think we need to have a discussion about the healthcare premium, town contribution, and steps and lanes, in the sense that a 7 or 8 or 6% plus annual increase in costs, even if nothing else changes, is probably not sustainable going forward. And one way to mitigate that would be to work with some of those levers. So I do think that is kind of an elephant in the room discussion that we should at least have.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That actually was rolled up into Subcommittee 1 and is referenced here as sort of the question around benefits.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it probably makes sense for it to be done in partnership with the town subcommittee. So I'm not sure who's picking that up. I just don't want us to be duplicating effort. So I just want to, obviously, given the timeline and all the work that, just the reviews that need to be done, think about how we're.
Yeah. Well, the steps and lanes, though the town has steps and lanes, the particular steps and lanes that affect the schools are unique to the schools. So.
Yeah. All right. So I think that, perhaps it's more reasonable to have an assumption that the town subcommittee will drive this question on healthcare premiums, which I think is an important one. I agree. And then maybe sort of reach out to them. Has that subcommittee met already? I don't know, Chaz, or Tiffany.
I think he said earlier today.
Yeah, the town subcommittee met.
Can I ask a question about that though? It's like my understanding, I don't know what you're thinking, but if you're thinking that the premium is going to be adjusted, I mean, I thought that that was very complicated and required multiple union votes.
It does,
So I guess
unfortunately.
like, what is the point? I mean, it's great to sort of forecast that as a future topic, but I don't understand what the town subcommittee or this subcommittee would do given a window of 7 weeks on something that requires multiple unions to come together to vote. I guess
No,
that's what I'm trying to
I
understand is
don't,
like,
we can't, I mean, it's also a subject of collective bargaining, and
right,
uh, we cannot decide it. But I think what we can do is to recommend something that says, look, um, uh, with inflation running at 2.5%, 8% increases are not sustainable. Um, the and therefore we recommend an override level of say 4% or 4.5%. And it's up to the schools, it's up to the town to deal with that override level, either through negotiating a, a different reimbursement rate or finding savings elsewhere or a reduction in force or other steps. I mean, our recommendation goes to the dollar, the gross dollar amount that will be provided. We cannot say you cannot have an increase of more than 3%, but you could say it's reasonable to fund an increase of X%, and you have the authority to work within that limit. I
Yeah.
mean,
is that what this
I
committee is
think we
supposed to
cannot, I
do?
guess my point is we cannot simply be price takers and say, look, hey, it's going to go up by 8% every year. So give us the money, because then I think we're not doing our job.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, right, if I heard your question right, is that what the committee's supposed to be doing? I think an override study committee is supposed to be recommending options and ideas to the select board, and as well as a general level. And like if you go back to the 2014 override study committee, there were, ideas that had several options listed underneath each one. And so, bringing up these issues and having the select board and the town population understand them,
Bye, Susan.
educated about them, is absolutely part of what the committee should be doing. What the select board does with that is totally up to them. We're not deciding anything. We're just giving them
Of
information.
course, but to me, saying, well, I guess like this idea of, for example, because I'm just picking on the GIC. I'm just thinking because the GIC is exceptionally complicated given that it requires orchestrating across something like 7 unions or so. And it requires syncing up with all of those contractual cycles to essentially achieve a majority vote on this change. And so I think it has to be even a super majority vote on the
I
change.
believe
So
there's a weighted, it's a weighted
yes,
majority. It's
it's
something like
exactly. So
7%.
it's quite complicated. So to me, essentially, a committee that said, well, we're going to give you, and I'm making this up, 3% for health insurance because, and then you're going to have to figure it out, is essentially assuming like, or is setting the town up, the town writ large for failure, because if they aren't able to achieve this within the next year that this takes effect, or even 2 years or 3 years, then we're guaranteeing a reduction in services. So that to me, I find very challenging because like there's this that feels like a very blunt mechanism on what is a very sophisticated and complex issue to solve.
Yep. So the other side of that coin is to raise the idea and have the select board basically say, nah, too complicated. All right. It's different than to say stay silent on something that the teachers are 50% of the vote. Okay. And if the teachers decided that this was something they were willing to support because of how the other aspects of a collective bargaining and negotiation went, then that's a real positive. Now, I don't know anything about the timing, and I don't know anything about how difficult or how possible something like this is, but I do know that the town is one of what, 6 or 7, 8 municipalities that have been operating at a complete disadvantage relative to every other municipality in the state. And so anything that we can do to try to get out of that position that we and these 7 others boxed ourselves into, is something that's worth exploring.
Is the
Even
6 or 7 or 8 because they're offering the 83%? Is that
no,
what is he referring to?
because when we went in, we were one of the first communities that went into the GIC. And when we did, there were sort of specific rules. And Chaz will be able to explain this better, or maybe Dick. And then after like 2 or 3 years after we went in, the state changed the rules about who could go in and what they could do and how they could differentiate between classes and so on and so forth. And they didn't grandfather. And so it's we've been paying for it ever since. That's why.
And I personally feel super comfortable with the idea of guiding this, like saying all these things in the report of these are the challenges and this is something we should be working towards. I just like, as a committee member, the idea of proposing a number with the idea that an acceptable outcome if staff isn't able to negotiate successfully is a broad scale reduction in force, to me is like quite a challenging solution because it's asking people to vote for something that we're asking them to spend more without the sort of guarantee of any sort of quality services at the end.
So I actually think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. And the reason is because I think we dig into the numbers, put forward a recommendation. We come here and we discuss like what we want to consolidate, and there's probably multiple what we want to recommend, and there's probably multiple options, right? So Dick presented one option, right? We could think about slicing it slightly differently, and I do think that it warrants further discussion, and I don't think we want to have that discussion now before we have more of a think about it.
If you want to talk about things like one of the things that I thought was interesting about your questions is that most of them dance around the edge of what actually PSB's business is. Dick is getting into it a little bit more with the idea of looking at steps and lanes, although again, that's a contractual obligation. But
Right.
things like, because you're talking about, for example, the special education services of materials fee students. We're talking about less than 50 students total, if I recall correctly. But if you want to really think about ways to look at how systemic levers are pulled, there's many more that are but we've talked about at school committee, for example, the 4+1 model at the
Right.
high school, right? And so if the committee is interested in looking at sort of making recommendations and possibly influencing the future of financial decisions or operational decisions, to me, there's larger, more effective ones to focus on that this committee might want to talk about.
And that's why you're on this committee.
Exactly.
Because I want to understand what
That
those
is
are.
that is precisely the sort of information that should be brought back here.
That's right. Because I mean, look, we know that the majority of the budget is compensation, right? And then there, and that tells you what you need to know around where the opportunity is, right? But also there's the I think sort of thinking creatively about that. There's the 4+1, if I'm saying that right. I know what it is, I just don't know what it's called. Ideas that were on the table. There have been a number of other things that have been floated. I think let's list those things out. Let's figure out what the highest value things are that this group can focus on. And I'm hoping that this group can come up with what we think that is, so we can dig into the opportunities that we think are the most meaningful. From my perspective, and I missed the macro sort of existential discussion in the few minutes at the beginning, the way that I look at the work of this committee is that, we want to put forward a recommendation that we think, I'm hoping that we'll put forward a recommendation that we think is compelling to the town, right? And to voters. And I think in order to do that, there needs to be some of like, hey, we've looked at these things, right? We need to build a level of trust. These are the things that can be done now. These are the things that might be done later. But all of those things need to sort of come together to build a compelling narrative that creates some confidence in whatever we recommend, whatever path we recommend at the end of the day. And so, you know, some of those things might not be short term, but some of those might be, hey, these are the things that we think it's important to look at because this is where the opportunities are for us to be more efficient or gain more revenue or whatever those things are. But I also don't want to limit what we look at just to sort of the time horizon of, you know, between now and then the beginning of the next fiscal year. I think that's limiting um, for what can.
And that, Sadaf, is particularly true since we're looking presumably at a 3-year override. And one thing that has been done in the past is you've gone to the voters with a request for X amount with X divided, part of that to be added in year one, part of that to be added in year two, part of that to be added in year three. And the to the extent that there are elements that have to be phased in over time, that phasing in of the tax increases can respond to that.
Right. So Mariah, what would you add to the list? I'd love to hear from you. You've obviously been doing this for a number of years on the school
Yeah.
side and on the advisory side, like, you know, please
I
provide.
think that there are, I mean, I guess I don't want to get ahead of staff who live this in and out every day. So there's big picture thing. Are you leaving too, Jeff?
Yeah,
Bye,
yeah,
Jeff.
sorry.
Um,
Sorry, I gotta go too.
yeah,
Thank
I
you
think
all.
that like there's those kinds of things that staff would be thinking about. And I really like, it's not that I'm afraid of revealing something that they don't want to have revealed. It's more like they live it. And so 4+1 is an example, but I'm sure that when they're going through and looking at their efficiencies and so forth, there's going to be many more examples that they might be, um, they're better placed to provide sort of the context and the impact. The other thing that's, I think, challenging, and I think that we'll need to understand is I would say that like things like, again, what Dick was talking about or steps and lanes, there's things that are long-term contractual issues, and then there's true sort of like, I can take this next year efficiencies. And so balancing those two things. So, one example, like I think that has been talked about for at some point was having true time card systems for paras who are out or for hourly employees, I'll say, and how that could better manage hour tracking in a more efficient way. Like, so that could be something. I imagine they'll probably bring something like that up. That also requires an investment, but I think there's a net savings. I'm sure there's a net savings on that. Um, but again, I just think that like, I don't feel like I'm the best placed for us to say like, oh, it should be A or it should be B. The other thing I would say about the list that you all put together was, and I just want to go back to refer to the wording closely to what you had, but it was something like the spaces and the analysis of the spaces. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up.
Analysis of class sizes and
Yes,
classroom. Yeah.
class sizes and classroom usage. Um, and I guess my question was like, I guess my question is, what were you thinking with that one?
So this was about you know, our question of are we utilizing the space to the full extent possible? This is tied into potentially like buffer zones and potential redistricting.
Hmm.
I know anecdotally as a Lawrence parent, you know, my two kids are now in 3 section grades that are still, you know, those class sizes are still below the targets for each of those grades. Um, Not to mention the empty classroom, you know, for each of those grades. So there is space, right? Now, I haven't seen the full sort of the enrollment and the you know expected projections based on that, but there's the question that was asked was, is there a way to get to the target sort of expected classroom size? Are we utilizing our space effectively? And then what is that, you know, bringing that together with some other pieces that are being looked at, do we have the right distribution?
Mm.
Could we be using that space differently? So, for example, if you did shift around, I'm just sort of like playing out one scenario. If you did shift around some buffer zones, right, and you use the 2 extra classrooms at Lawrence, and you freed up, whatever classrooms in a different school, could you use that space differently? Could you rent it out? Could you use it, in a different manner? What would that look like? And is there then an opportunity to make sure that we're maximizing our assets from a real estate perspective, and also staying within our target classroom sizes, which, it looks like we're below based on what I understand today.
I wonder if one opportunity, I'm just going to respond to that, Cliff, but I wonder if one opportunity in advance of the budget being prepared is perhaps to get to the bottom of some of what Sergio was alluding to. And I think what you're alluding to, which I'm not sure is actually true, about this, that people are confusing the idea of sections and actual classrooms and conflating them, and thinking there's empty classrooms because your grade is 2 or versus 3 sections. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to have um, a side conversation on this idea of facility use in advance of budget use.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I'm happy to sequence it however you want, and I think these are questions. These aren't my questions. These are questions that have been raised in the course of the committee conversations for the last number of months, and I think it's and I will say these are questions that are asked more broadly in the community as well. So to the extent that we want to build some trust, and if you feel like it's not reflective of what's actually going on, I do think it's worth, one way or another, making sure that we put something in here that says, "Hey, we did look at this, and this is the conclusion, the recommendation." Cliff.
Yeah, to this point, I've heard, surprisingly, in the last 6 months or so, comments about classrooms not being able to, being inadequate to handle large student groups. And, it's a comment that was prevalent back in 2014. And then throughout the following 7 or 8 years. But with all the new construction that's gone on, it sort of sounds a little bit, it's surprising to me to continue to hear that. And so one of the things that I would like to see, and I think it's something that would help quell people's, I guess, concerns, would be a classroom inventory by school and an identification of inadequate rooms by school. And, just really be able for people to be able to understand where this narrative continues to come from. And if it's because we're using, Old Lincoln, or it's because we're using the property on Fisher Hill, because they're temporary. That's one thing. But if it's not, it's sort of like, come on. I thought we were past this, and I did. I thought we were past
I will say that the worst of it, but I mean, I think it would be really interesting to have this because, for example, in late 2020, when we were doing the classroom inventories and doing the airflow exchanges per minute calculations, and we had all of this data on classroom size, and you'll see that like there's classrooms that are as small as 550 or 600 square feet, and they go all the way up to 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. And a lot of those small ones, for example, are at New Lincoln. And they're or there's classrooms that are slightly odd shaped. And anyways, I think there's certainly pockets of this. And I think it would be, again, if you're like, to your point of sort of talking about the things and dispelling rumors and seeing sort of state of the land, I think this would be a good pre-topic that perhaps we have enough data on already that Susan doesn't need to do the work because this really predates her because it was all done for COVID.
Is is that information still accurate? I'm just trying to think of what's changed since 2020.
The only thing that's changed is the Driscoll building, but we should have pretty clear data on square footage by room size for that. I'm trying to think if anything else has changed. We don't have Clark Road anymore. So that would but those classes have gone into Driscoll or to some other places. So it should mostly be up to date.
And then in another few years, we'll have Pierce, which will sort of change the calculus again, right?
But I think the question is, I think that like, well, this is what I was hearing last week, and I think what I'm hearing now is, are there pockets of space which are underutilized or unused? And then where does this narrative come from about spaces that are inadequate, right? And those two things are sort of related and sort of not. And so that's an opportunity to talk about both of those things.
Okay. So I have to drop at 4:30 or just a couple minutes before.
Could I just deal with one ministerial item? I assume that we are not meeting Monday of next week, which is 3 days from today.
Yes, I was just going to ask that. And I think the question is, do we want an alternative meeting for next week to keep moving things along and not lose next week?
Well, we can't meet Tuesday.
Yeah. Could we do a Wednesday?
We're talking about the 22nd. And we have school committee, so, and school committee Wednesday and Thursday, I guess.
I'm not
That's what I
sure
have
we
in my
have
calendar.
advisory next Tuesday, but I have to check. Look, a 6 o'clock meeting that only runs till 7 on a Tuesday or Thursday certainly works for me.
But we have school committee starting
On Wednesday.
6 o'clock on Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay. So okay.
We could do Friday.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah, we could do Friday and then Monday and then Monday after that. I was hoping to do something in the middle.
If we could do a little earlier, like a 5 o'clock.
On Wednesday.
Yeah, that would be good.
People do a 5 o'clock on Wednesday. I can do that. I'll be
5 to 6 on
I
Wednesday,
can
then
do
we
that.
can do.
okay. All right. So 5 to 6 on Wednesday, the 22nd.
Okay.
Please
And
just
Chaz
email
Nicole
that
will
to
send that
Nicole
out.
to confirm that so that she
Okay.
can post that first thing Monday morning.
Okay. So I'm sorry, you're letting her know that, Chaz? Or
Yeah, I will email her.
okay, great.
Um,
Okay, so I mean, we still need to figure out sort of who's doing what. I think what I'd like to do for Wednesday is like, so I think it is valuable to do the analysis at a minimum. I think we have some agreement on that. The healthcare premiums should be dealt with by the school, by the town piece, and then we'll plug into that. I think the question is just what did they cover, and who is responsible for sort of that benefits portion. We heard about sort of, steps and lanes, Dick, that you brought up. Um, if that's something that, you want to take, maybe, I think we want to craft maybe what that looks like. Um,
Would it be helpful for people to send you their thoughts after this meeting about specific ideas, have you compile it, and then circulate it back to everyone for discussion next week and, doling out responsibilities?
yeah,
That
I
makes
think,
sense?
let's do that because I think we'd be good to sort of just craft, just be a little bit more precise on some of these things that we were like, had come out of, obviously a variety of discussions and aren't sort of completely fleshed out. So that makes and then Chaz, as far as the ongoing Monday meetings after next week, um, uh, should I let Tiffany know that that's what we agreed to, the ongoing Monday?
Just if you would email Nicole and let her know. Actually, you know what? I'm writing an email now, so
Okay.
I'll just copy you, Sadaf, on this.
That sounds good. And Mariah, if you have other people, I'll kind of go through my notes. I mean, I've talked to a bunch of people and have some other sort of potential, things that were sort of put out there as ideas that maybe we can discuss. But, I'm really interested in sort of what you've heard, the discussions that are happening within the school committee or the school admin side on what those opportunities are. And perhaps when, obviously there are people on this call, you guys heard the request, but I can send out a note and just ask people to send me that information, so that Bella and other people, Susan, have an opportunity to weigh in on that as well. Just want to make sure we're focused on the right things, and given our time, we just dig into the sort of the top opportunities and manage our scope. Okay.
I think it would be helpful. I mean, I just like really quickly looking again at what the committee wanted to do. It was review of the net cost of non-resident programs. And I'm just sort of curious whether that's still a intent, given the data that came back or the lack of data that came back from staff as an answer to the questions. And then review of student program costs and revenues, including BEEP, METCO materials fee, and extended day programs and summer programs. And I'm confused about that, and I don't understand what you were hoping for. BEEP, I understand, and materials fee, I guess I'm confused about the other ones, so.
Yeah. So I think the sort of extended day summer programs was, what kind of revenues are we getting from those programs, and is there an opportunity to benchmark them and see whether, those are opportunities for us to charge more essentially. Summer programs, would sort of be on the town side. I think that sort of got added in here, right? That's not so much, that's not run
We're
on
talking
the,
about like camp?
yeah, I think, yes. Summer programs is, and
The
then
schools don't do any summer programs, do they, Mariah?
We do. We run, there's Star Academy, which is for METCO and ELL students. There's Project Discovery, which is reading, like reading recovery for kids who are
But
below reading level.
okay, but they're
So yes,
they're act they're not
there's no summer camp style things, if
right.
that's what you're
Okay,
asking. Right.
yeah,
No, these are
right.
specific targeted programs. And then there was, of course, extended school year. And all of these programs are offered free because they're part of the academic support programs of the schools.
so that's not what was intended by the sort of summer programs idea. It would be,
Okay.
really more along the lines of what the rec department runs camps. So I
Okay.
think that just got sort of lumped in here when it was sort of separated out into subcommittees. Because
And extended days, like you realize those are not PSB run either, right? Those are third party nonprofits. Okay.
that's right. Yeah, I know that. But there was a question about, sort of what fees do we charge them, and is it enough? And I think we want to have a conversation about that.
Yeah. I think if we do have a conversation about that, I'd be happy to provide the history of the changes that we've made to that system. But also I think that the extended day directors themselves would be quite interested in sort of that conversation. So
Yeah.
we could,
You think?
I think, and I would say that there are some programs who, like for example, Lauren Bernard's enrichment program at FRR that have been in the news because
Yes.
of feeling that PSB is overcharging.
Right.
So there's certainly a lot of people with a lot of strong feelings about the increases to the charges that we have already made.
Right. It's a question for discussion, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just that like I think there is a lot of content there, and a lot of invested parties.
Yes, of course. Definitely. All right. So send me your topics. I'll consolidate. I'll try to do some synthesis before our meeting next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. And then we'll start our Monday cadence the week after. I think those are the big things. And when you send me your feedback, if there are areas that you want to, people have a particular interest in, in helping to drive, or, there's legwork you think that, you can do to help in that particular area, let me know. Then we can have a conversation about whether there is analysis to do or not, or whether these are sort of questions that go back to the schools. Just given staffing and some of the other feedback that we've got, I do want to just be thoughtful about, what is reasonable to ask of the central office, and just, set our expectations correctly. Okay.
Great.
Are you gonna let Jeff know about next Wednesday?
Yes, I will text Jeff directly, and then Tiffany was gonna, I'm sorry, Nicole, maybe somebody's gonna send out a meeting request about Wednesday.
I just sent out a scheduling email to everyone. So I sent out to Nicole and Tiffany to schedule next week's meeting on Wednesday, and that Mondays at 5 going forward every subsequent week. So standing meetings. We will set those up. I had a couple of bullets for initial discussion. I BCC'd all the committee members. Sadaf is in the CC line. So you can reply all to this email. Just don't add any other people if you have
Okay.
topics you want to add.
Monday at 6.
I'm sorry, Chaz, we said
Monday at
Monday at
6.
6.
Monday at 6. I will correct that. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. It's just next Wednesday at 5.
Yes.
Everyone knows. I have to run. My kid is waiting for me. All right. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Talk to you guys next week. Bye.